Hello, my name is Ryan Jones, and welcome to Backseat Baseball. Today we will be talking about the Home Run Derby, go through the matchups, and see who I think is going to win it all. Give out first half awards of this season. Talk about which teams need a boost for the playoffs, and also how do I feel about these things at the end. I first want to give a shout out to my mom and sister who helped create my logo. It's up there on YouTube now. It's a car with the man in the back seat hitting a baseball. My mom doodled it, and then my sister made it look really nice, so I wanted to thank both of them. Alright, let's get on to the podcast. So, the matchups for the Home Run Derby are the number 1 ranked Shohei Ohtani versus number 8 Juan Soto. Number 4 Salvador Perez versus number 5 Pete Alonso, who's the reigning champion in 2019. Number 2 Joey Gallo versus number 7 Trevor Story. And number 3 Matt Olson versus number 6 Trey Mancini. In the first matchup, Ohtani versus Soto, I think it's great that Soto wanted to participate, but I believe the hype of Ohtani and the power that he has will get him through to the next round. Juan Soto reminds me a lot of Ichiro. He has that power, but he uses it more for contact, so he could surprise some people with the number of home runs he hits, but I think Ohtani's going to fly through the first round. Salvador Perez versus Pete Alonso. I think Pete Alonso is going to show why he won it in 2019 and completely destroy Salvador Perez. But I do think Salvador Perez is going to have a very good first round. He's not going to make it through, but I think it's going to be closer than people realize. The Joey Gallo versus Trevor Story. This is a fun matchup because it's the home kid, Trevor Story, against one of the most powerful guys in baseball, Joey Gallo. We could see an upset here with Trevor Story, just having the home team behind him, but I'm going with Joey Gallo. Not just because he's my favorite player, but because I think the power is nothing you can mess with. And then Matt Olson versus Trey Mancini, another great story. Trey Mancini coming back from cancer last year, and now participating in the Home Run Derby. It's pretty fun to see, but I think he's going to lose to Matt Olson in the first round. So now we have Ohtani versus Pete Alonso, Joey Gallo versus Matt Olson. I'm going to say this is where Ohtani ends. He's going to lose to Pete Alonso. Again, Pete Alonso's done this before. He's very good. He's very powerful. I think Ohtani is going to be a great matchup. These final four is exactly what a fan wants to see: Ohtani, Alonso, Gallo, Olson. So much power with these guys, but I think Pete Alonso is going to have the edge over Ohtani. Even though most people want to see Ohtani win, I think Pete Alonso gets the job done. And then I'm going to go with an underdog. I think Matt Olson's going to beat Joey Gallo. I just have this feeling. And then in this final, we have Pete Alonso versus Matt Olson. And I'm going to go with Matt Olson. I think the underdog wins it all. New face to the Home Run Derby, new champion. A guy out in the West Coast that doesn't get enough appreciation. I don't think people see how much power he really has. I think he's going to come home with the trophy. So I'm going with Matt Olson. I'm going to submit my picks right now on the MLB app. And let's move on. Alright, next we are going to talk about the first half awards. I have AL MVP, NL MVP, AL Cy Young, NL Cy Young, and managers who deserves to be the first half award winners. The AL MVP, it really comes down to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Shohei Ohtani. I'm going to go with Ohtani, I think, because of he's batting .279, 33 home runs, which is now 5 more than anyone else in the major leagues. 70 RBIs, which is ridiculous. Halfway through the season already has 70 RBIs. And then a stat that really popped out to me, he has 12 stolen bases on the year, which is incredible. He can really do it all. I'm not even going to mention what he's did on the mound this year, which is also great. But it's something I haven't seen before, and no one's really seen before. And in my opinion, it's the best first half I've ever seen in my lifetime, so other people can disagree with that, but it's really just incredible to watch. My NL MVP should be Fernando Tatis Jr., but I'm going a different way. I'm going with hits, batting average, and that's Nick Castellanos. He's batting .330, which is, I think, just behind Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in batting average, so I think Nick Castellanos is number one in the National League. Talk about a valuable player. He's really the reason Cincinnati's still in this hunt for a playoff position. Such a scary man to face in any situation. If you throw him a low fastball, he's going to crush it. It's just so much fun. He's so much fun to watch, and his fielding's gotten better as well. I remember making fun of it when he was with Detroit, but he's really improved in the outfield as well. And I think Nick Castellanos is my first half NL MVP. AL Cy Young, I mentioned him last podcast, but Lance Lynn, he's 9-3 on the season, 1.99 ERA, and 105 strikeouts. This man's been doing this for a long time and hasn't gotten the recognition he deserves, especially with the amount of strikeout numbers he puts out. Something clicked last year in Texas, and his ERA's gone way down than it normally has, and it's just great to see. I hope Lance Lynn starts in the All-Star game, but they might have Ohtani do it. But he's my AL Cy Young winner. Before I move on to NL Cy Young winners, something that really caught my eye when I was looking at stats, was Shane Bieber has been out for three weeks, I think now. And he's tied for 6th with Carlos Rondon still in strikeouts, and only 16 strikeouts out of first place, which is the guy who has the most strikeouts in baseball is my NL Cy Young winner. But think about that, how easily Shane Bieber probably in 2 games would already be at that strikeout, have that record for strikeouts, and that he was so far ahead of the game that he's only in 6th place with, I think it was 106 strikeouts. That's just incredible how far ahead of everyone else he was before he got injured and how great of a pitcher he is. But back to what I was talking about, the NL Cy Young, Jacob deGrom. He's 7-2, a 1.08 ERA, and leads the MLB with 146 strikeouts. He just keeps getting better and better. The sky's the limit for Jacob deGrom. He throws over 100 miles per hour. Dirty breaking ball. I can't say enough great things about Jacob deGrom. The managers in the National League, it could have come down to either Craig Counsell or Gabe Kapler, and I'm giving it to Gabe Kapler. San Francisco has no business being where they are right now. You look at the team, I was looking at the roster, and everyone's really just pulled together. It proves it's a team sport with all the guys they have. No one's really a big name on that team, but everyone comes together every night and puts on a show. So Gabe Kapler being able to move the lineup around and put players in different positions, he really deserves that first half NL Manager of the Year award. And then in the American League, this is a little out of petty, but I wasn't going to give it to Alex Cora because I don't think he deserves anything with what he did in the past. I'm giving it to Dusty Baker with Houston, a guy who's also had a lot of young kids because of injuries come in, and he's placed them perfectly in positions for Houston to take back first place in the AL West. So I think Dusty Baker deserves that Manager of the Year award. As we move on to which team needs a boost for the playoffs, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams to talk about. I'm going to list what position I think they need to work on, and then give a suggestion on what player they might want to go out and get. First off is Boston. I know what you're thinking, how a team that has 20 wins above 500 need a boost for the playoffs. It's because of that rotation. I think down the line it's going to be a problem. They've really done great getting them this far when you have pitchers like Martin Perez, Garrett Richards somehow getting you through this far. But you're going to need some help. And the Rays in Toronto are still right there, so they're not going anywhere. So I think if Boston wants to hold on to the AL East, they're going to need to get a starting pitcher. I'm going with John Gray, a great strikeout pitcher. Get him out of Colorado. Those home run balls will go down. I think John Gray would be a great fit for the Boston Red Sox rotation. Also, you could say Chris Sale's coming back, so why do we need to get another starting pitcher? You don't want to put the pressure on Chris Sale to perform like that right away out of the gates, especially with how long he's been out. So I think getting John Gray would be a great addition to the Boston Red Sox. The Toronto Blue Jays, I mentioned them recently. I think they also need to go out and get a pitcher. Ryu really hasn't been as good as he once was last year, being a Cy Young candidate. I'm going with Dylan Bundy. I think if you get him out of the Angels, he can get you 6 innings a game and get the job done for Toronto. So if he can keep the ball low, he'll get more wins. So I think if Toronto goes out and gets a pitcher like Dylan Bundy, there's so many pitchers available on bad teams this year. So it doesn't have to be Dylan Bundy. There's other pitchers that I'm going to mention because a lot of these teams need starting pitching, so you'll hear a lot of others. The next team I have is the Oakland Athletics. I think they need to do 2 things. I think they need a DH and a pitcher. The DH is none other than Nelson Cruz, coming back to the AL West, not Seattle this time, but to Oakland. Get a little pop in that lineup. How scary would it be to face Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, and then Nelson Cruz in a lineup? That scares me just thinking about it, the amount of home run power in those 3 names right there. And then pitcher, I'm going staying in the AL West. I'm going Kyle Gibson. He's had such a great year. He was 6-0 with a 1.99 ERA. He got a loss, though, his last outing, so I think his ERA is up to 2.39. And he's done great this year for Texas. And I have another Ranger I think is going later in this segment. Next, I have the San Francisco Giants, another first-place team, but the Dodgers and Padres are right behind them. It's interesting looking at the Giants. I mentioned how there's no big names, but everyone comes together and does their job different nights to get wins. So it's kind of hard to bring in a big name. But Buster Posey just went on the IL. Kurt Casale is a great catcher, but I don't know if you want him to be your everyday catcher. So I thought maybe bring in a catcher, Jacob Stallings from the Pirates. He's had a very good season this year, especially with the bat. And then do what you want to do once Buster Posey comes back, obviously being the starter. But I think San Francisco needs another catcher, and I think Jacob Stallings is the way to go. The Cincinnati Reds, I also think need a pitcher. If you can't tell, there's a theme of pitchers for this boost for the playoffs. You have Castillo already. You have Wade Miley, Sonny Gray. I think one more name would be great, and I'm going with Matthew Boyd for the Detroit Tigers, who probably should have been traded a couple years ago, but he's had to stay in Detroit. Bring in a left-handed pitcher. I think he can get the job done in Cincinnati and hopefully boost you into a wild card or maybe even a division chance. Next is the New York Mets. Third base is a big hole, I think, for the Mets. I was thinking that, and then last night, Jonathan Villar decided to hit 2 home runs playing third base for him, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Villar is the answer. But there's really 3 third basemen you could go with for the Mets. If you want to go cheap, you could get Eduardo Escobar for the Diamondbacks. If you want to have to give up a little more, you can get Josh Donaldson for the Twins. And if you really want to prove to the league that you're serious and you're going to win it all this year, you can go out and get Chris Bryant for the Cubs and just end all speculation. Be the big team in the trade deadline. Prove that you're here to stay and that you're going to win it this year. So I think the Mets are going to end up with Josh Donaldson, though. He's had a good bounce back year. If he can stay healthy, I guess that's always a scare. But if he gets injured, Jonathan Villar can obviously get the job done for the Mets as well. The Nationals, with Kyle Schwarber going out, I think they really need another outfielder. They have Juan Soto, Victor Robles, and I think they need one more guy. I came down with two options. Mitch Haniger, who's done great this year after having injuries with the Seattle Mariners, or Anthony Santander for the Orioles, who has some injury problems, but I think you can get him on the cheap side right now from Baltimore. So either of those guys would be great. If you want a switch hitter, Anthony Santander can do that for you. If you want more pop in the bat, Mitch Haniger can do that for you. But I think if the Nationals are serious and want to take over the Mets in the second half, they need to get another outfielder. Down to the last two teams, the Philadelphia Phillies, they need a pitcher and a starting pitcher and a relief pitcher because they've had real problems getting saves this year. Hector Neris tried to do it, and then Alvarado tried to do it, and they've both been struggling. So for a relief pitcher, there's multiple guys. You could get Rodriguez for Pittsburgh, Gregory Soto for Detroit, Ian Kennedy from the Rangers. But I'm going to say Yimi Garcia for the Marlins has the most upside potential, and I think that'd be a great trade for the Philadelphia Phillies. Also, I think they need a left-handed pitcher in that rotation as well, so Danny Duffy for the Kansas City Royals would be a nice pickup as well. Because with the amount of talent on that Philadelphia Phillies team, if they don't make the playoffs still since adding Bryce Harper, it's been a real failure, and you know Philadelphia fans don't like to wait as well. So I think making the big splash on the trade deadline would be huge for the Phillies. Next is the Atlanta Braves. Lastly, I think they need an outfielder, and this breaks my heart because I mentioned Joey Gallo as my favorite player, but I think going out and getting someone like Joey Gallo, because you're missing Marcell Ozuna because of troubles he's having outside the field, you really need to bring some more pop to that lineup. And having Acuna, Freddie Freeman, Gallo, Ozzy Albies, that's such a scary top four for you in a lineup. And I think you go out and pay big for Joey Gallo and take over the NL East. So if you could tell, the last four teams were NL East teams. The division's wide open, and that's why I mentioned so many National League teams. Those are the teams that I think need a boost for the playoffs. And I'm ending with, how do you feel about these things? Last night something interesting happened, and I'm not going to get into a big rant about it, but I think it's interesting. Acuna was hit by a pitch for the sixth time by the Marlins in his career. Last week he was hit as well by the Marlins. It all started when Jose Urena started hitting him back a couple years ago, and then he got traded, and we all thought it would be over, but he's been hit twice this year by the Marlins, and I'm going to go out and say they were both not on purpose. Pablo Lopez hit him last week and was ejected after the first pitch after the umpires came together, which I thought was such a ridiculous move. If you're going to eject someone, you shouldn't have to come together with the umpires to make a decision on that. If it's that serious to eject someone after a first pitch, it should have happened immediately. I think Acuna's name and the power and the everything he brings to the game was the reason that result was happened. But Pablo Lopez's next outing after that hit someone with the inside two-seam fastball. I just think Pablo Lopez, who's having a great year, why would he want to ruin it? Has trouble controlling inside pitches against right-handed batters, and that's why Acuna got hit, and that's why he hit someone his next at-bat. He hit Acuna with a sinker, and then he threw a two-seam fastball against the next batter, the next start. And then yesterday, Acuna was hit by a slider, and he got very upset about it. I think you just got to walk to first base. I know getting hit by a ball is nice, but I think Bednar was on the mound for the Marlins, and he can throw 96, 97 miles per hour. So if he really wanted to hit you, why would he throw a slider? Let that sink in. And it was a 1-0 game. The Braves are only up by 1. Why would you want to put Acuna on first base in that situation in the 7th inning? I'm not saying Acuna's a baby. I'm not saying he doesn't have every right to be upset about being hit 6 times by one team. But I think you just need to act like a professional and walk to first base and not make a scene. Jose Urena was the big problem, and that's why this all started. But he's not there anymore, and I just think Acuna needs to be a man about it and walk to first base. To end the show, the MLB draft is coming up on Sunday, July 13th. It's a big draft because there's some big pitching names I wanted to talk about. I don't know all the high school kids that are coming out. I really only know these 3 names because I love watching the College World Series and how great they did. I know Pittsburgh's supposed to go with a shortstop, a high school shortstop, number 1. But this is the thing. Jack Leiter is such a great pitcher. I keep seeing him falling to 4th to Boston. And if my Texas Rangers that have the second spot don't draft either of these 3 names I'm about to say, I might have a 20-minute rant to go on next podcast. But Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker, and Will Bednar. If Will Bednar sounds familiar, he's the one who got the job done with Mississippi State in the College World Series over Vanderbilt, facing Kumar Rocker, and really just said, this trophy's mine, and shut out Vanderbilt. And him and, I'm forgetting the bullpen arm that always comes in after him. They destroyed Texas in the semifinals, and then they destroyed Vanderbilt in the finals. He's not supposed to go until later in the draft, towards the end of the first round, but I think he's a top 10 pick. He's proven what he can do against these guys, and I think he should be in the top 10. Kumar Rocker's really fallen from being the number 1 pick, and I'm seeing him dropping to 6th, 7th, 8th. A lot of people think he's going to go to Kansas City, but he's a top 5 pitcher. I'm really hoping Jack Leiter gets drafted by the 2nd or 3rd pick, so then Boston will go with Kumar Rocker. If anything, just being a Rangers fan, if the Rangers don't draft a pitcher with how terrible their pitching is in the minor league system, I'm going to freak out. That's all I'm going to say. I'm excited to see where the careers of Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker, and Will Bednar go. I'm going to keep an eye on them. I'm excited for all the players that get to get drafted, especially after COVID last year and all the problems that we had, kind of a guessing game of who was going to be drafted and who wasn't going to be drafted. Things are getting back to normal, and I hope they live it up. Remember this moment for the rest of their lives because their journey to the show is about to begin, and I'm hoping that they succeed and we get to see them out on the major league field one day. And that's Backseat Baseball. I'm Ryan Jones. Thank you for your time and have a good one.